Hey guys, right now we're gonna do a huge gear shift. We're gonna go from Africa the Beautiful and we're gonna slide into 2020, 2021, 2022 modern day. And we'll do this periodically so that you can feel engaged with what's going on currently in your world and pause a little bit and make connections. You might have heard in the news recently about something called privilege. You might have heard it as white privilege or just privilege. But what we're going to talk about is the transformation from Africa the Beautiful to what we're going to study now, which is slavery and the loss of personal gain and injustice and inequality, which will be a long period in our history class in African American history. So we're going to pause a minute and talk about something current, and we're going to try to connect the two. So, privilege, what is it, and how does it affect me? Always have to put an academic definition on things. And here's a good hint for the future. Make sure whenever you're starting out a paper or starting out a good response, using a quote or Webster's dictionary definition is always a great way to start. Definition: inherent advantages possessed by a white person on the basis of their race in a society characterized by racial inequality and injustice. This sounds very scary. This sounds very sad. And for my white students, it may provoke some feelings of, well, this is not me. I'm not doing this. So I don't want you to take that on. Just like you personally didn't own slaves, this is just a topic that comes from generations. So it's not singling out one person or one family. It's just a definition. So I ask that you open up your mind and open up your heart to hear another perspective. Make sure you're writing this down. If I were you, I would highlight the definition of privilege. So let's break it down. Imagine a race. So I love to talk about this. Imagine you're on a track and everybody's in the blocks. They're down, right? And they're really trying to get ready to start the race. The gun goes off. Boom! And everybody's allowed to start running. Well, due to history and in the world, when that gun went off, white men got to start the race and they got a huge head start. Women still weren't allowed to get started. White women, because they couldn't vote, they didn't have a lot of power, their position was at home. Blacks, even worse. Their women nor their men could do anything because they were enslaved. So while white men were able to jump ahead and go to school, build wealth, start companies, and work, a lot of women and minorities were still in the blocks. They couldn't even start the race of their life because they were held down by things like slavery, misogyny, and privilege. So keep in mind that a lot of success that you're seeing now by certain racial groups is because they got a head start over other racial groups. And catching up, think about it like this: the race from 400 years of slavery is going to take a while. Imagine being able to already to be assumed that you are innocent until proven guilty. White privilege or privilege is the ability to say, wow, I got pulled over by the cops. But you know what? I'm a mom, I'm a woman, and for sure they're not going to take me in. They're going to give me a ticket and let me go. Just by the nature of either my gender or my race, I'm assumed not to be guilty. The role of generational wealth. So there are certain racial groups that their white parents were so successful and they were able to pass down the family business and pass it down and pass it down and pass it down and pass it down. So wealth begins to accumulate along with the role of generational education. My dad went to Yale, my grandpa went to Yale, my great grandpa went to Yale. And so they're able to network and get this wealth and education that other races didn't have access to, some until the 70s. Y'all, the 70s. So, no pity needed. It's not that racial groups are saying, minority groups are saying, oh, have pity on me. We didn't get to have the same privileges, or we didn't start off life with a head start. We didn't have people to pave the way for us. We had to work, we had to scratch, we had to be better. It's not about pity. What I think minority groups are asking is for non minority groups just to recognize and to reflect and to understand that when sometimes things are unequal, the frustration on the part of those minority groups that didn't get the head start and that may have to put in a little work, more work than the other group had to. That's called inequity or not equal. So, what do we do? How do we bridge this gap? Let's talk openly about equity and support people in both our communities and our places of worship that talk about equality and recognize that, yes, there's a group of people that did have a head start. We also, for minority groups, can defy the odds. While privilege does exist, there's a such thing as privilege. Some people got and get the benefit of the doubt purely because of their race or their position. That doesn't mean you are of any less value. You might have a history with the Holocaust. You might have been or have a history with internment camps or slavery, but that doesn't necessarily dictate who you are and your wealth and what you can become. Have these difficult conversations and be open to others, their fears, their views, their thoughts, and ideas. It's okay for all of us not to agree and think the same. But when you have a neighbor or community member or friend who may have an experience, like in the second video that you're going to watch, recognize that that is true and recognize that that can happen. So that's my basic talk on privilege. We're going to also look at a video of a story of privilege, and we're going to do a virtual privilege walk, which you will see, are you privileged, and just really make you think about what this meant to you and what did you take from it. And then we're going to have a viable discussion. So I challenge you to engage and really think about this topic. Thanks. Go to the next activity in your module. Click next.